My words would better convey both the sadness I feel and the action
In the past, presidents of the United States, regardless of party affiliation, were held to a high rhetorical standard and expected to speak both eloquently and intelligently. Some critics argue, however, that our current president, Donald Trump, breaks many of these standards. I sat down with 3 Whitman English teachers to find out how President Trump's writing compares to that of an average Whitman student. Each teacher was unknowingly given a different speech or letter written by Trump, and then asked to grade it based off of how they would normally grade their students. Let's take a look.
Okay, so, well,
there are enough rhetorical features and rhetorical unique tags to know that this is a Donald Trump speech. It's got some of the hallmark things that he does, which is he just trails off, doesn't complete thoughts, but lets the beginning of the thought sort of run itself out in the audience's mind. And you know what? We can't let that happen. And I know what happens. There's this cipher, this emptiness where he's like, wait, what happens?
All right, so I don't know who wrote this, but I have some guesses because if I'm correct, this style of speech preparation is very unique. So it starts by saying China, and then Japan, and then Mexico. So it's showing a sequence and setting a precedent for all of the ways in which the United States has, quote unquote, become a dumping ground for everybody's problems.
it's very elementary school in terms of vocabulary.
It's giving just abstract sketches of ideas, and the audience is driven to try to fill in the sense on their own. It's a pretty powerful tool, honestly. We know that his rhetorical style is effective, mostly because of the sense of vague, undirected fear and anxiety that it brings up.
When did we beat Japan at anything? They send their cars over by the millions, and what do we do? When was the last time you saw a Chevy in Tokyo? It doesn't exist, folks. They beat us all the time. One thing I will say is that the reasoning is nice and compartmentalized into 2 or 3 sentences at a time. So that's there.
His verbiage, his overly wordiness, but also this resistant ambiguity causes the audience to try to fill in the best they can in their heads, like, oh, what happens? Yeah, something threatening to our party, our people, or whatever.
Based on the speeches he gives, he a lot of times cannot pronounce words correctly or use words in the correct context. So I'm not surprised, but it's definitely not the type of level of education of someone that should be leading a country.
He's trying to get back on track, but of course there's no track whatsoever. He continues, so I kept trying to say, why is this? But it is just there. We have these pronouns with no antecedent, and the audience, reluctant to feel stupid, just goes along with it and says, yeah, and there's never a time to actually stop and interrogate the gaps in logic.
I would probably pull the kid aside and just have a conversation with them about connotative meaning versus denotative meaning, because you got to be careful with what you're putting out and how the message might come across. And there's some message in here that is, we'll say, faintly not nice in what it might be suggesting. Our country's in serious trouble. We don't have victories anymore. We used to have victories, but we don't have them. I think I'm just going to write a lot of question marks in this. When was the last time anybody saw us beating, let's say, China in a trade deal? They kill us. I beat China all the time. All the time. I assume that means at volleyball? Football, perhaps?
I would probably give this maybe a 70, like a low C. If that, it depends on what exactly you're looking for.
If it's AP Lang and one of my students delivers this speech, this would, early in the year, maybe get a C. for the election unit, for our purposes, for the quality of the delivery and presentation and preparation, this would probably be a D.
If a student were to do this textbook, it would be a bad grade. It's a lot of incomplete thoughts. But if they had the charisma, which is another part of it, the sense of a connection with the audience, then I would grade it on effect, which I don't know how this one went down. I do remember this in the news, but if we think about the way that he's able to activate people who have, both sides, who have been disengaged in the political process, then it's working.
I hate that I'm uncomfortable. That's my final thought. I hate that I'm uncomfortable.